Uh, yes, I've just recorded that. What I do is that the recording is not made public. It is made available to people who attend and the people who registered for the program. So that's why I'm recording this session, because some they are not able to attend because of one thing or the other, and I do not want them to miss out. So that's why I'll send a copy, a copy of the meeting, the recording. Okay, so let's get going. And before I continue, I'd just like to welcome Rina. Thank you for joining us, Rina. How are you doing? Oh, I don't have any audio from you. I can hear you.
Hi, I'm fine.
Oh,
Haven't,
good. Now I can hear you.
haven't,
Great,
haven't seen you
great
for
that
a
you're
long time.
great that you're here. Alhamdulillah. I'm so
Thank you.
I feel so blessed that all of you are here this evening. Now, going into the topic that we are discussing about this evening, it is on the how to eliminate the top 10 behaviors that turn people off with this one shift. And as we go along, I would like each and every one of you to begin guessing what that one shift. Think about, think about in our relationships, we are doing many different things, and yet there is one thing that you can change, that you can shift, that can make a huge difference to the quality of relationships. Now, talking about relationship, I like to use the metaphor of a garden. Yeah, and those of you who've attended my program before, I give the metaphor of a garden. What does it take for us to have a beautiful garden? I have that fantasy of having a beautiful garden, but I know that I will not have a beautiful garden, because the one prerequisite to having a beautiful garden, what does it take to have a beautiful garden? Some people say that you need good soil. Some people say that you need to have the right plants to grow. However, when you take all of those factors in, do you know what does it take to have a beautiful garden? A gardener. A gardener will know what plant to put, what to do with the soil, and how to make it grow. So, and I like to use uh, this metaphor because during my A levels, I studied in a beautiful flower center of Europe. It is a town called Harrogate. Hashim, is that picture familiar to you?
Oh yes. We pass this every day
Every day
to the college.
to the college.
Beautiful place. Lovely place.
Now, I'm in awe of the, I would say the skill of the gardeners of Harrogate, because they have these flowers all over the town. I'm in awe of the skill because they know what to plant, when to plant, such that, you see, Harrogate has this Harrogate flower show in the international flower show every year. It's in early spring, kan, Hashim?
Oh yes, it is.
It's just that the skill of the gardeners of Harrogate is such that they can make the flowers bloom on the opening day of the Harrogate flower show all over the town of Harrogate. So that is the metaphor that I would like to use for relationships, because just as we need a good gardener to have a beautiful garden, in order to have the word that I'll use is mutually enhancing relationship, is that we need to have good partners who take care of the relationship. Just as gardeners take care of the plants to make the plants grow beautifully, the partners in the relationships, the players in those relationships need to mind, to take care. So it's about minding that relationships. Relationships don't just grow like flowers, don't just grow. They need to be nurtured. They need to be cared. So in order to have beautiful relationships, we need to be deliberate about the relationship. So the question that I want to pose to you this evening is, how can we be deliberate about our relationships? And I want you to ask yourself, how can I be deliberate about relationships? Because the quality of the relationships um, will depend heavily on the behaviors of each partners in that relationship. So what are your behaviors towards your partner? And how are your partner's behaviors towards you? That will impact the quality of relationship. And over here, the sense of responsibility, the powers, using your powers of speech and behavior comes into play. That the partners in the relationship should know what are their responsibilities to and responsibility for, to be clear about those. Now, when we talk about relationships, relationship is that dance, that movement between living beings. I'm just covering this very quickly in the introduction part, just to before we go into the actual behaviors, just as a reminder, so that we do not lose focus about what's at the core, what's at the fundamental level. Because afterwards, once we go to the very behaviors, you know what's driving those behaviors. Relationships are mainly an orbit between two or more people. So we are orbiting around one another. Sometimes we call it a dance. It's basically an orbit, two people orbiting around one another, just like the Earth orbiting around the Sun. So we have two individuals orbiting around one another. What is the force that is pulling the people in orbit? Just as between the sun and the earth, the force is gravity, pulling the sun and pulling the earth towards the sun, that causes the earth to orbit around the sun. In a relationship, the force is love. So it is the love between the two parties that pulls them together, that creates that orbit. So over here, we know that love is a prerequisite to a relationship, just as gravity is a prerequisite to the orbit of the Earth around the sun, the orbit of the sun around the galaxy. So does the gravity, which is called love in human relationship. It is a prerequisite in order to have that relationship between two or more parties. Now, you can have many different types of relationships, many different types of orbits. Some orbits are closer, some orbits are further. So over here now, the next point that I want to touch over here is that the quality of the love between the two players in a relationship defines the quality of the relationship. So when you have a healthy, loving energy between the two parties, then you are creating a healthy, loving relationship. If that gravitational attraction, that force is unhealthy, the attractive force, that love is unhealthy, then that creates an unhealthy relationship. So basically, when we talk about relationship, the two parties needs to have that love in order to keep the relationship. And as they dance, just like any dance, how are you dancing? Are you dancing with the right tempo? So this is where, when we talk about tempo, we go into the behaviors. The behaviors that we have towards one another. Those are the those behaviors will determine, will influence, will have a bearing on the quality of the relationship. So when the behaviors are enhancing to both parties, then there is rapport. The relation, so when the two parties involved, they behave in ways that support the relationship, that makes it grow, then you have better rapport between the two parties. So you need to have rapport in a relationship. And the two parties needs to know one another and also being known by the other party. So I need to know my partner and also need to be known by my partner, because that supports the rapport between the two of us. And also in a relationship, there are skills involved. And the primary skills in relationship are the skills of communicating and relating. Why it is the primary skill? Because communication is relationship. So that very quickly encapsulates this thing called relationship. And I'd just like to pause over here because I've covered quite a bit in a very short time, because I want to uh, spend a little bit more time into the 10 behaviors that may put people off. So with that very quick introduction about relationship as reminders to all of you, I'd just like to pause over here and get some feedback and your thoughts and ideas with respect to that very quick introduction that I've done. So go ahead, you can unmute your mic and let me have your thoughts. Yes, Dr. Shakir.
Okay, thank you. You just revisited back way 10, 50 years ago kind of thinking. At one time, what we have is feeling. Yeah, we have feeling. We have no other things, no such thing as thinking. So you revisit, those are very lovely, interesting to look back. What we meet, what we miss, what yet to come. And what you did just now is very nostalgic kind of description. Your school time, your university with your friend. The way you start off with a good orbit, how you put the orbit, because there is an element of pull and push factors. And interesting is that those things are connected. That's how love is being made of. And secondly, it is subjected to the environment. You can recall it. The relationship is so good. That's why we call deep. Sometimes they call it deep thinking or deep feeling. So this kind of feeling, you cannot wash it away, but you keep it positively, it will grow and it will generate more feeling of love and tend to communicate. What you did now, tonight, is the best way to communicate. It's the best way to get connected, learn and relearn. The more you revisit, the more beautiful it is. Thank you, Mazuki.
Thank you, Dr. Shakir. Appreciate those thoughts. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
And I noticed Satria has joined us. Welcome, Satria. Love seeing you here again.
Good evening.
So just anyone else, what are your thoughts just based upon that quick introduction on relationship? So you're good. Let's move on to the next part of this discussion that we have this evening, going into the behaviors that turn people off the most. when you behave in a certain way, people stay away from you. When you behave in other ways, people come close to you. Just as I was saying that, I remembered an event that happened to me when I was 12. Um, since small, I've been small. So I entered this school, boarding school, in my first year in prep school. Satria knows where it is, because we went through the same school together. In prep school are for first formers. So there's a special place, where, the dorm where we stayed. I mentioned that I'm small size. In Form 1, I was the third smallest. I counted. I was the third smallest in the whole form of about 120 students. Now, one day, a friend pulled a prank on me. We came back from class that day, and because lunch wasn't ready yet, so we came back from class, we went and performed our prayer. So while I was performing my prayer, my friend came over to my bunk, my bed, took my shorts and hid it. So after prayer, when I went back to my bed to get the shorts in order to go to the dining room to eat, we need to be dressed in our school uniform again. So my shirt was there, my shorts wasn't there. Somehow or the other, this mild, tiny person burst into anger. And I can't remember exactly what I did, because I was so angry. I did not know what I said and did. And guess what? For the rest of the 5 years that I stayed there, nobody ever pranked me again. Because probably they say, this guy Chilia P, you don't mess with this guy. So nobody tried to rag me or whatsoever. Everybody left me alone. And I can't remember what I did. And I didn't even know until today, not until today, I didn't know who did it. It was not until 40 years later. After we finished school, we went university, studied, we started working. 40 years later, we had a reunion at prep school. And I verbally wondered, I wonder who was the guy who hit my shots. And it was my best friend. Beside me, he said, aku lah. The way he answered it after 40 years, I could feel his fear. So, when we talk about relationships, it is the behaviors. Some behaviors turn people on, some behaviors turn people off. So I was reading this article based upon a social survey. I think it was based on a social survey, the American public. And I would guess that it is not a scientific study. And in this article, this person listed down something like 16 behaviors that turn people off. So what I did was I had this experience of turning my friends off for more than 40 years. I went through each of those behaviors and asking myself, do I have any of these behaviors that may turn people off now? And I'm glad that quite a lot of those behaviors I didn't have in the way that I behave. Some of them I behave in those ways a little bit. So I went through those behaviors. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you what these behaviors are. Now, the startling thing for me is coming from neurosemantics perspective. When we look at things, we don't just look at the details. From those details, I begin to think, is there a common thread? What is the structure behind those behaviors? And as I look at those behaviors, I notice, whoa, there is one specific commonality between all of these behaviors. So when I show you these behaviors in a short while, I want your brain to immediately go into thinking, what's the commonality between these behaviors? I'm going to show you 10 of these behaviors. The author listed down 16, and I noticed out of the 16, these 10 came from one specific characteristic. Okay, so let's take a look what these behaviors are. And as I share with you each of these behaviors, I'd like you to mentally tick in your mind how much of that behavior is part of you. How much are you behaving in that particular way? So are you ready with that? Okay, so let's take the first one. Forgetting to show interest in people. That's one behavior that turns people off. Things like you meet your friends, 3 or 4 of you, and then you begin to be, you just zone out. You just be thinking about something, not showing interest in the people around you. So that's the first one. So give yourself a score for that one. Meaning to score of, let's say, if on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 means you definitely don't have interest in people, so give yourself a 10 for that. But if you do have interest in people when you meet them, give yourself a lower score. So meaning to say, the highest score is for the worst, the worst characteristics from this behavior. So that's the first one. Ready? Next one is not expressing gratitude or withholding acknowledgement. People do something good, something useful for you. You don't say thank you. You don't exhibit that gratitude. Okay, so that's the next one. Third one is acting like a child, and typically children are very self-centered. When people act in ways that show they are self-centered, that's why we say that we say, oh, that person is childish. So acting like a child is one behavior that turns people off. Next one is excessive texting while together or being preoccupied. There you are having a lunch between the two of you, and both of you are texting to somebody else. Okay, that's next is penny pinching on a date. Oh, so I can't comment on that because I've never been on a date in that way. I got to know this wonderful person, and I made the decision. We made the decision to get married, and that's it. We didn't go for a date. So there. Okay. Next is disrespect for service industry workers. Have you ever come across people like those? In Malaysia, I do notice that, for example, in mama shop, I noticed that some of the customers, they can be very rough with the mama who works there as wait staff. Okay. Next is talking about previous partners. Oh dear, not very sensitive behavior, is it? So that's another behavior that turns people off the most. Next is the behavior of being selfish, arrogant, and brag. Do you know someone who behaves in that way? How much of it do you have in you? Another one is chronic lateness. Yeah? And chronic lateness, some of them, they can't help it, and that's another part of a meta program. However, chronic lateness to a certain extent seems to indicate that the person doesn't respect the other person. So that's chronic lateness. And the 10th one is complaining constantly. So there, 10 behaviors that are considered as the behaviors that turn people off the most. So from those behaviors, I wonder which of the 10 that you find in yourself the most. So let's just pause over here and let me hear what are your thoughts about this, because when I first looked at these behaviors, I said, some of those behaviors I've not noticed here in the East. I'm referring to Malaysia, but I would say that it's quite universal. Yeah, it's quite universal in that way. So let me hear your comments with respect to these behaviors. Which of these behaviors you find a problem for yourself? I'm just going to pause here. Go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I just want to share um, a small incident within our primary school members. We have a group with ourselves, and one day one of our members, the school, uh, his son got married, and he got married in Bandung. So and when he posted that into our group, one of the persons in the group commented, not on that marriage, but on her family marriage, talking about how the family got married or married to so and so person. Then everybody was said, so childish of her to tell this. So the word childish appears that she is self-centered. And for the fact that the rest of the members are clapping their hands, say, "Oh, this is very interesting. Budaya yang cukup apa ni, halus, lembut, and so on." So one of our friends was telling, she is sort of like, in the physical stage, she will grab the microphone and say, "I want to speak. Let's listen to me." So people say, "Oh, you're so childish." Sometimes adult, they bring in childhood into the adulthood. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. So basically, when we talk about children, I have for quite a long time, I've been wondering what's the difference between childlike. A childlike quality is a very powerful quality. That's why children learn so much more and so much faster than adults. So childlike quality are admirable qualities. However, childish qualities are a total put off. And when we distill the difference between childish qualities with childlike quality, the distinction is that the behaviors that we call childish are those behaviors that are self-centered. So these are people who are immature, they are self-centered. A mature person moves from dependence, they go into interdependence, and they are able to relate with other people. So that's why one of the points, behaviors that turn people off the most is acting like a child. Yeah, and luckily, he's no more in charge of the nuclear button. So somebody else has taken charge of that. So we can breathe a big sigh of relief. Okay. Now, Tğɪs, you put there. Yes, there are people who go. The point that you say, I eat salt more than you eat rice. Wow. So to show that they are so great. And Tğɪs, if you next time somebody says that to you, then you ask them, wow, in that case, you have high blood pressure or not?
No, actually, I said that's why you're going to a dialysis center soon.
Okay.
Kidney failure. Too much thought.
Too much salt. Okay, thank you. Yeah. So when I look at all of those behaviors, the first thought that comes to mind, so is there a pattern to it? Is there a structure to it? So I begin to look at it from different angles. And when I begin to analyze it from what we call meta programs, from the thinking pattern, then I realized there is this one meta program or one thinking pattern that underscore all of these behaviors. Any one of you care to guess what that meta program is? For those of you who are not familiar, that's okay. Meta program is our default way of thinking. And in neurosemantics, we identify that to being at least 60 meta programs, 60 different ways of thinking. And when I look at those behavior, there's one of them that totally stands out. That is the common denominator for all of these 10 behaviors. Anyone care to guess? Guat Ching, you want to guess or not? Or maybe Marilyn. Yeah, Guat Ching.
I don't have idea.
Okay. Marilyn, you want to guess or not?
You are laughing, so must be something that I know. Meta program. I don't know. I'm thinking really hard as well.
Okay. Let me put you out of misery. That's the meta program. Oops, sorry, I did not share the screen. It is a meta program called attention. There we go. The meta program of attention. Meta programs are our default ways of thinking. And in this meta program of attention, on one end of the spectrum, there is attention to self, giving attention to oneself. So that's one end of the meta program. On the other end of the meta program is the attention to others. So it is a spectrum. Now, before I continue on, I just want to mention here, as I keep mentioning over and over and over again, there is no one right way of running a meta program apart from 6 of them. The rest of the meta programs is contextual. For example, the meta program of attention, on a day that you have been really working hard and you've not had your breakfast, lunch, and dinner, it's almost midnight, and you can hardly move because your energy is all drained, you've not eaten. The meta program of attention to self is very important, because at that point in time, you must go and eat. Otherwise, you might fall ill. So the meta program of self is important in that particular context. Now, on the other end of the spectrum is the meta program for other, meaning to say, to be able to give attention to the others around you. For example, let's say I'm giving the example of my uncle passing away a year or two ago. He passed away. So when my uncle passed away, he had two children, my cousins. And when I attended the funeral, I put my attention on them instead of self. My uncle has passed away. I'm sad. At the same time, I know that they, being the son and daughter of my uncle, they deserve more attention. So my attention is to take care of their feelings rather than trying to take care of my feelings in that scenario. So this is what we refer to as the meta program of attention. Now, with those behaviors, I noticed that those behaviors came out when the person meta program is running in the on the spectrum of self. They are thinking about self, they are giving attention to self, and they are not giving attention to others. That's why they behave in those ways. So just going again into those behaviors, forgetting to show interest, not expressing gratitude or withholding acknowledgement, acting like a child, excessive texting while together or being preoccupied, penny pinching on a date, disrespect for service industry workers, talking about previous partners, selfishness, arrogance, and bragging, chronic lateness, and complaining constantly. All of these behaviors comes from when the person is running the meta program of attention from the spectrum of self. So that's why they default into those behaviors, because they are having the attention to self. So this is where, if we want to overcome those behaviors in ourselves, all that we need to do is to be able to learn to make the shift from self to others. Shifting the focus or attention from self to others. So this is the shift that I'm referring to. The one shift that when you make, you'll be able to overcome all of those behaviors is to shift that, that way of running your brain to be focused on others. What I'm referring here is not to say that you neglect yourself altogether, because this is not an either or meta program. It's either you pay attention to self or you pay attention to others. It is about context. So over here, when I mention this shift, to be able to run that meta program in a range that is broad. So it gives me the ability to shift to myself and to shift to others depending on the circumstance. For example, I've been supporting the neurosemantics trainers training for quite a number of years. And I know that there are times, as I support the trainers training, I need to be supporting all of those participants. So I need to help them with the drills, with what they are learning. So that is when I run the meta program of attention in the others. At the same time, I do need time for myself. I do need to take care that I eat the food well. I exercise for myself. So that's attention for self. So having that balance, there are times that I bring my attention towards others. There are times that I bring the attention towards self. So this is what we are referring to, the meta program range, so that we have a range that is wide, so that we have the flexibility to move within that particular meta program. Okay, so how we detect where we are operating on that meta program is by answering these questions. I'm going to give these questions to you. Just list, just hear this question and answer it for yourself. In relationships, do you find yourself primarily attending to your needs or to the needs of others? In answering that question, it can give you a clue where you are operating that meta program. Another question is, if there's a conflict of interest, do you focus on your needs or those of others? So where are you on that scale, on that spectrum? How easy or hard is it to attend to others? How easy or hard for you to attend to self? So as you answer those questions in your mind, it gives you an idea of whereabouts that you are operating from. And again, I would like to remind you that it's quite rare to find somebody who operates only at one end of the spectrum. It's rare. Most people, there is a range. The question is how wide or narrow that range. If your range is narrow towards self, then you'll find it difficult to take care of others. In relationship, you want to bring that range a little bit more towards the attention for others. Once you shift that, notice the behaviors. Between the behaviors that turn people off and the new behavior that you will be able to exhibit when you make that shift towards others. The behavior of forgetting to show interest towards others. Once you shift that meta program, you begin to show interest in others because now your attention is on others. Next one, not expressing gratitude or withholding acknowledgement. Then it makes it easier for you to have this new behavior of expressing gratitude and acknowledgement towards others. The old behavior of acting like a child will give birth to the new behavior of being considerate towards others. I remember my my granddaughter, those of you are familiar, my eldest granddaughter, I call her Grasshopper. When she was about 2, 3 years old, she was also self-centered to the extent that if I were to just lie down, just to take a nap, she'll come over and hit me on the tummy. Grandfather, let's play. Okay, so uh, being totally self-focused. It's just that I notice as she grows older and older, by the age of about 4, her meta program of attention, some sort, it's just like a switch came on. She began to think in terms of what others want. So you can make that shift. Next, excessive texting while together or being preoccupied, that comes about giving attention to self. Now, when you start to give attention to others, it makes it easy for you to be attending to the present company, to be present in the moment with the people around you. Yeah. Penny pinching on a date, when you shift your meta program to others, you'll be more considerate towards other people. The way that you communicate in paying for the meal whatsoever will be more considerate towards others. Next one, we've got 5 more to go. The behavior of being disrespectful for service industry workers, when you shift it towards others, it turns into being easy to respecting others no matter their job. I had this funny experience quite a number of years ago. Those who have attended my program, I've related to you this experience. There was one time that I got fed up with the mama shops around the place where my office is. I live in Kota Damansara. The office is in Kota Damansara. There are a couple of mama shops there. The reason why I got fed up was I was observing when we go to the mama shop, the way that they take the order, it is as if they don't have any manners. You know, you go sit there and the mama comes to you, apa mau? Have you had that experience? You give the order and say, roti kosong, teh tarik, and the mama just goes off like that. Similarly, after you finish eating, you go to the cashier to pay. You say what you ate and you pay the money, not even a thank you. So I came to the point, I said, why am I going to these places where they gave us poor service? Then I started to, okay, before I forswear going to mama shops, let me do some observation. What makes them behave in those particular way? And putting on the hat of observer, I begin to notice, no wonder uh, in the mama shop, they behave in those ways because the customers behave in those ways towards them. Yeah? You have customers who go there and sit and just call the mama, hey mama, sini mari. Because the customers will behave in those ways. That's why the mama learns to behave in that way. So this is how when people disrespect people in the service industry, they get that same kind of service back. So that's why, based upon my social experiment with the mama shop, I decided that, okay, I'm going to treat them the way that I want them to treat me, with respect, with honor, with love and care. And when I did that, they begin to treat me in that particular way. Okay, so moving on, talking about previous partners, the moment you shift your attention towards others, then you begin respecting your partner's feelings. It becomes easy for you to do that. Selfishness, arrogance, and bragging can be transformed to giving attention to others, humility, and modesty. Chronic lateness will give way to respecting to other people's time, and complaining constantly will give way to accepting of people and situations. So with this, just one shift in the meta program of attention allows me to overcome all of those behaviors into new behaviors that are more useful and meaningful. Now, every of the behaviors that we behave are driven by our meanings, beliefs, and values. So in the context of this meta program of attention, in order for us to shift the attention from self to others, what kinds of new understandings, meanings, values do we need to take on in order for us to be able to behave in those ways? So that's the question that I just want to pose to you over here in order for us to have this discussion in a short while. Because in order to create that shift, in order to overcome all of those behaviors that are unresourceful, all that we need to do is make that shift of attention from self to shift it more towards others. By shifting it towards others, I can now behave in new ways that are more enhancing, and these new ways will be able to help me to create better rapport with the people around me. It's just that in order for me to shift to be giving attention to others, what meanings, beliefs, and values do I need to take on for myself that will expand this meta program towards others? Okay, so I'm going to just pause this presentation here just to get your feedback on this. Yeah, I'm just noticing the point that Cik Siu put there, uniqueness of mama restaurant or stall. No, it's something that put me off at that time. However, I was so glad I made that social experiment, because when I realized that they were behaving in that way, because the customers were behaving in that way towards them, I deliberately set the intention every time I go to mama shop, I will behave in the way that I want them to behave towards me. So I want them to smile at me. So when I go into this mama shop, I deliberately smile at them before I give the order. And you know what happened? It stunned them because it's rare for customers to smile at them. So I go into the mama shop, the mama comes to me, apa mau? I look at the mama, I smile. Roti kosong, teh tarik. The first few times I did that, the mama was stunned as if this is an alien. However, I kept doing that. When the mama came with my order, I say, thank you. And I will not just thank the person who served me, I thank all the others. And you know what, where my social experiment went to? I came to the point whereby even before I step into the shop, the mama will go, hello. And there have been few occasions where they compete with one another to come to the table where I sat in order to take my order. And there was one incident whereby I went to this mama shop with my wife. And as we were eating there, the mama came and said to my wife, oh ini orang bagus lah, dia baik. My wife came to the point whereby, wow, when we come to this mama shop, I feel like we are royalty. When you treat people with kindness, they respond in that way. Thank you, Akmal. Yeah, I think because people, I don't know why people continue doing that. However, I'm so glad I did that social experiment. It's just that with the lockdown now, I cannot go to the mama shop anymore. Okay, any comments with respect to what are some beliefs that we need to have in order to be able to operate not just thank you, Sarah, not just from the range, the meta program of attention itself, in order for us to shift ourselves to others. Yeah. One of the beliefs that I had in that social experiment with the mama shop, one of the beliefs that was running, that I was operating from, is that people are good, people are kind, people want to do the best that they can, and people will behave to you in the way that you behave towards them. Notice I've just rattled off about 4 or 5 beliefs. Are they true? I don't know. When I operate from that belief, I got the result that I want. So I will continue to use those beliefs. So part of my belief system is that people want to be respected. People deserve to be respected. Yeah. So go ahead. Sarah, you would like to say something? Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to on my video.
Oh, thank you. Nice to be able to see your face. Yeah. And Akmal put there, when we want people to respect us, we need to respect others first. It should be the way. Thank you, Akmal. Yeah, thank you. Satria, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think probably one of the mindsets I always have is to have to give the benefit of the doubt lah, and always ask people how they are, because you never know what's behind that lah.
Thank you. Give people the benefit of the doubt. Yeah. Ini kita panggil husnuzon. Yeah. Husnuzon, for those of you who are not familiar with the term, means giving benefit of the doubt, giving people the word is benefit of the doubt. You give you associate good intention to a person's behavior. Yes, Hashim.
I think from the perspective of the laws of thermodynamics, yeah, for every action there's a reaction. So if you walk into the mama store and say, "Hi, mama," then mama will say, "You don't have respect for me." And that is the meaning of communication. Thank you.
Thank you. Good. And yeah, Rᴇʟᴛ put in there meta program, caring and respectful belief. Thank you, Rᴇʟᴛ. Yeah. So in order, this is where, let me just share the screen. I'm not going to use this one yet, but I hope you can. Whoops. This is where in neurosemantics we are talking about as a person. Okay. We are running the matrix. There are altogether 5 content matrices. I'm just going to cover 2 of these content matrices. One is the matrix of self, and the other is the matrix of others. When I use the word matrix, I'm referring to our meanings, understandings, beliefs, values, identity. So all of these layers, these categories, when it is concerning one subject, one category, so that's what we call a matrix. So matrix of self are our meanings, understandings, beliefs about ourselves. The matrix of others are our meanings, understandings, beliefs, values about others. So with respect to this meta program of attention, self and others, it refers to these 2 matrices. When our matrix of self is healthy and our matrix of others is also healthy, then that is balance. That allows me to shift between giving attention to myself and to others healthily. However, when the matrices are imbalanced, a person may have a disproportionately high matrix of self and very low matrix of others. That's when that person finds it difficult to give attention to others. So when we talk about this meta program of attention, self to others, it also relates to these 2 matrices operating here. Okay, so this is also where we need to take into consideration when we talk about attention to self and others. When a person finds difficulty in giving attention to others, so what's happening is that the matrix of others is unhealthy, and that's why we need to rebuild that by having resourceful beliefs about others. So just like some of beliefs that I mentioned to you, that I am an individual in the sense that I'm an ordinary human being, and I'm also a special human being. So are others. They are ordinary human beings like me, and they are equally special in ways that are different from mine. So I'm respecting myself and I'm respecting others equally. So this allows me to be more healthy in how I relate to myself, in how I relate to others. It makes it easier for me to under the right context to totally serve myself, and under the right context to totally serve others, and all of the spectrum in between. Okay, so that's just a little bit with respect to this matrix of self and others. And I'm just noticing the point that Wong Kong put in over here. Agree with you. When we work as a team, we should always support and respect each other. And this is critical. It is possible to respect even when you disagree. And sometimes people make this, in NLP, we call them complex equivalence. Complex equivalence, they equate two things together. So when I disagree, therefore I disrespect. They equate this. Those two are independent of one another. It is possible for me to disagree with a person and respect the person at the same time. Yeah? So to be clear in that line. So those of you who are familiar with the story, I'm not going to relate the story here. The story of the Muslim, Christian, and the Jew walking down the road. That gave me a deep sense of respect for myself and for the Christian and the Jew in that particular story. Okay, we disagree, and yet we disagree in terms of the theological disagreement. However, we respect each other for having our own unique beliefs. Okay? Any questions? Sarah ada question ke? You're good? Now, what I have also noticed, not just the meta program of attention that came into play, there are two secondary meta programs that also are useful for us to look at in order for us to be able to move from behaviors that are not useful to others to be able to put our focus on or our attention to others as well. The two secondary meta programs are, one is the meta program of responsibility, the ability to respond, to take on responsibilities, to take on duties. So the spectrum for this meta program is under responsibility on one end of the scale. The other end of the scale is over responsibility. Okay? So the healthy meta program for this is, we call it the healthy responsibility. Healthy in the sense that I take full responsibilities for my powers. My powers are my powers of thinking and feeling, and my power of saying and doing. I am 100% responsible for that. Next is when I'm relating to others, I'm responsible to you only for what I say and do, because I'm in control of what I say and do. However, what you say and do, I'm not responsible for that. That's your responsibility. So healthy responsibility is to be able to draw that line. We call it the responsibility line, or sometimes I call it the sanity line, because you cross the line, you become insane. And many people drive themselves insane because they want to take control of other people's saying and doing. It will drive you insane, because what people say and what people do, that's their power, not mine. So healthy responsibility is to be able to have that clear boundary. Yeah. So this meta program also comes into play as a secondary. So when I'm operating from the healthy responsibility, it makes it easier for me to behave in ways that are resourceful to the relationship, even when my partner is behaving in ways that are not resourceful to me. Okay. Next meta program, the secondary meta program is the meta program of rejuvenation. The meta program of rejuvenation. How do we rejuvenate? One end of the spectrum is introversion, that in order to rejuvenate, I need to be in my cave all by myself. I don't want anybody around. So that's the meta program of rejuvenation, introversion. The other end of the scale is extroversion. In order to recharge, I want to be with people. In order to recharge. So, because when I want to give attention to others, I need to be, I need to have the right energy. I need to recharge my energy, because giving attention to others requires energy. So do I know how to recharge my energy? So that's why when I gave the example of my supporting in neurosemantics trainers training, knowing that, how many hours? Knowing that for 12 hours, not 12, 12 to 16 hours a day, I am there serving the participants of the training. I deliberately mentioned to the organizer that please give me a single room, because my rejuvenation is introversion. So for 16 hours, I'm serving others. I need to recharge my battery. So that's why I requested for single room instead of sharing room, because then I can be by myself and I don't have to take care of others just for a few hours in order to recharge my battery. So it's useful for you to know your rejuvenation direction. Some people are ambivert. They can recharge whether they are by themselves or with others. So that requires another level of skill to be able to extend those. So these are two secondary meta programs that I detected that can be useful for us to bring ourselves to greater levels of flexibility in terms of paying attention to others. Okay, so any questions that you may have with respect to just this additional, as a bonus, I give you this two additional meta programs. Go
Yes,
ahead.
Marzuki.
Yes.
Marzuki,
Yes.
I can ask something. I'm not expert in meta thinking and meta coaching, but the way you described it is some element of hypnotic thinking is happening. Hypnotic mean the words, the description. Yeah, you're describing into a small area that is totally forgotten, because all this element, it touches on empathy, frames of reference, rapport, mindfulness, as well as what call it meaning making and values. So once you revisit this, there are certain words of different people, different person capture certain words, right? And they can expand the words and give an extra meaning. So one of the elements is quite important here is how we put our focus of attention. And the story that you described, it is relevant actually, especially if we are doing in the coaching time or mentoring time. That's why we can bring together ourselves wholeheartedly moving toward the direction that is being acceptable by the client outside. So knowing this and put this into practice, it would be very lovely. You are very conscious where you are, where you want to go, because this mindfulness, because you can change your behavior when you go to Kedai Mama, you know. You do Baba, you change your style. Why? You know how to entertain them because you are in their areas, right? And there are ways so you can pull them toward you, right? Maybe that one take a lot of. I think in this case, whenever they like you, if they really like you, no matter what you do, they feel good. So the first thing is that try to understand these people. We must be equally understand that this agree and disagree is part of our life. We can be friends even though we disagree on certain things, right? Like when we get to Mama. I do not know whether I'm saying here is applicable or not. What do you think about that?
Yeah. What I see, what I hear from what you're saying just now, is that yes, it requires us to be mindful. Yeah, because the hypnotic part of the thinking is that our meta programs are on default, and if we are not aware of our default setting, we are hypnotically behaving in that particular way. So when it comes to the meta program of attention, it is not for us to say that that person is self-centered. That is labeling. A person may be a very caring person and yet does not notice that they are operating that meta program in that particular way. So that is why our job, Dr. Shaka, as coaches, we want to draw the attention that this is, notice this is how, these are how you behave, and it goes to this particular characteristic of behavior. So have you noticed that? And for some people, by us giving them that feedback, it gives them like a shock, like a shock. Maybe another example that I can give with respect to hypnotic behavior is I met this particular, we call it estate manager, a farm called estate manager. When he began to learn the ways of communicating that comes from understanding others and influencing people from the way that they are thinking, and he learned this new way of communicating, he was in a shock because all these years, the way that he's been communicating with his people is to shout, is to scream, is to swear at his staff. Why? Because that's how his bosses before him treated him. So he was in that state of trance in terms of behavior. Only when we bring them to notice that behavior, they realize, oh, and in his case, he came up to me, he said, I didn't know that we can behave in this way. And one of them came up to me a few weeks later and said, even my wife is surprised that I'm behaving this way now.
I think that is neuron mirroring, where you managed to do that. Neuron mirroring, somehow or other you help them to unleash the potential. Unleashing potential, there's self-discovery.
Yes.
That's the ultimate of coaching. It's not just the purpose of creating the question, but the way we put it, make him become more conscious. Because he was in a very default stage.
Yeah.
When he start doing the work, that's his behavior. So he changed his behavior. And number two, when that thing happened to you, he is really focused to you, totally focused to you 100%. That's where the element of what we call it aha position and this client is tend to develop. Before toward the end, he said, "Thank you, Mazuki." He said, "I understand it already."
Thank you, Dr. Shakir.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Anyone else has got any comments with respect to the two secondary meta programs that I brought about?
Dr. Mazuki, just
Yes.
about the responsibility one, right? Towards others. Sometimes it's like, if let's say we over so-called responsible kind of thing, or overreacting, like everything I do for you is for your own good, kind of things. Yeah. How to, to I don't know how to use the word to say, make this person aware that whatever you do, I mean, it's something like your honey can be my poison kind of thing, but you say everything is do for me for my own good kind of thing. Yeah. So how to so-called make this kind of person aware.
Right. Thank you, Chik Siu. Now, for me, what worked for me was understanding personal powers and taking ownership of personal powers. Yeah. We have four fundamental personal powers: our power of thinking, our power of feeling, our power of speech, saying, and our power of doing, our behavior. These are the only four things that we have full control over. Other things we cannot control. People's behavior we cannot control. People's speech we cannot control. What more, people's thinking and people's feeling we cannot control. So responsibility is to be able to draw that line. I can only be responsible for what I can control. I cannot be responsible for what I cannot control. So once I'm clear about that, so even when I have, when I am, if I were to use the word, I am responsible for the people. For example, for my children, I'm responsible for them. At the same time, I know that what they say and what they do when they become adults, what they say and what they do, I cannot control that. I'm responsible for them. So I control what I say and I control what I do when I'm interacting with them, when I'm relating with them. So, and apart from what I say and do, if they do not want to follow any of it, that's none of my business. That's their business. Yeah. Maybe I can relate this example that I had with my son. At that time, he's now already, I think, 30 already. But at the time, just finished SPM, and he grew up during the time of Dasar Pandang ke Timur. So he's so gung-ho about Japanese and Japanese things, and he really wanted to go to study in Japan after his SPM. He did not make it. He couldn't get a scholarship to study, and he was so annoyed with that. I'm going to take STPM so that I can qualify for a scholarship to go to Japan. And my wife and I, we look at each other, we say, oh no, he's going to die, because we know his learning strategy may work for SPM. However, definitely it will not work for STPM. The SPM and STPM require different learning strategies. I will not go into in depth, but knowing his learning strategy, he'll kill himself trying to do that. But even when we explain it to him, he said, no, I want to do STPM. And our responsibility, my wife and I, our responsibility ends at what we say and what we do. When he decided to go for STPM, then we say, okay, so which school do you want to go? We help him find the school, because the decision is his responsibility. So this is where, when we are able to make those distinctions, life becomes a lot clearer for us and for the person. So I do not encroach into his power of making decision. I use my power to give him information. Making decision, that's his power. That's none of my business. It's totally his business. So to be able to be clear about what's my business and what's your business. Yeah, I hope that's helpful.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, any questions? Probably to summarize the discussion that we have this evening, is that there are behaviors that turn people off. And when we are in relationship with people, we need to know that our responsibility towards them is what we say and what we do. Even though we don't have control over their behaviors, over their thinking and feeling, what we say and what we do may influence them. So this is where the skill of understanding people, these are part of communication skill, the skill of understanding people is critical. Because once we are able to decipher how my partner operates, then I change my behavior to behave in ways that is acceptable to my partner. In that way, I behave in ways that makes the relationship closer. it helps us to be in rapport. It helps the relationship to be closer. It nurtures the love, the loving connection that we have with one another. Because in as much as we have the freedom to choose to do whatever it is that we want to do, know that the moment we get into a relationship, we cannot just refer to our matrix of self alone. Now we are in relationship, we need to think of the others and adapt accordingly. We cannot just go on with how we feel. We need to give attention to the person, to the other person in our life. In that way, we are creating healthy and loving relationships. Okay, so that's probably what I will summarize with for this evening. So the one shift that we want to make in order to sustain loving relationship is to make that shift in our meta program of attention, to move towards attention to others. In that way, we are minding that relationship. We are nurturing that relationship so that it becomes long-lasting and it becomes something that we are happy and fulfilled about. Okay, so with that, before we end, I would just like, as usual, to go to each and every one of you. And it's just before that, Hafiz, thank you for joining us. You've joined us at the end of the program. We are wrapping up the session. However, thank you for joining us, Hafiz. And before we end, I'd just like to go to each and every one of you. Let me hear what it is that strikes you in this session, what stands out for you, your takeaway for this session. So I'll begin with the top left-hand corner of my screen. Tğɪs, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. So actually, to me, is the shift of attention kind of thing. Because a lot of time is like, to me also is really so-called a reminder to me kind of thing. Like when I listen to that kind of things, right, I would say, yeah, my attention is always to myself most of the time kind of thing. So that's why this is how it's time for me to shift it kind of thing to others, rather than the scale is not balanced. It's like now I need to strike a balance in between that. Right. Thank you, Dr. Marzuki.
Thank you, Tğɪs. And before I move on to Wong Kong, I just want to mention to Hafiz, he put in the chat box, can I have recording? Yes, what I will do is that I will email you the link to the recording and you can watch the recording. And again, this recording is uploaded to YouTube as an unlisted video. So the link is only given to people who register for this program. So it is not a public video. And that's how I honor your privacy. Okay. So Wong Kong, how about you? Anything that you would like to say before we end? Maybe Wong Kong is typing there. Okay, I'll move to Dr. Shakir. Go ahead.
I'm trying to start with the beginning and we move toward the end. And we see the relationship that we have the first time when we get started until now. You managed to close up the relationship between the participant and yourself, one of the things. And the topic itself encourage everyone to really focus to himself first and looking forward. I mean, sometimes it brings you closer, sometimes you put it away. But in order to see the whole thing, we have to detach ourselves from the situation, looking at it in holistic point of view. And number two, the right choice of words, right? And the right example that we have. The beautiful thing, the beautiful thing that you describe about the early part in our life, what we experience. is that you cannot simply forget about it, because sometimes we are inside it, sometimes we are outside it. Now what you are telling, you are looking back to the history that you undergone before and looking from today's perspective with the right point of view. You go again your all internal defaults, method thinking. Yeah? You move that way. By doing that, we become a certain stage of what we call is social maturity. The ability to move from one social maturity to another. There are 5 levels social maturity, will allow us to describe those previous difficult to explain now become easier to explain. And secondly, you explain it full-heartedly. You were there when described to me, to us, you were there in front of you. It's not just telling outside of you, but you are inside of it, sharing what happened to you previously. Especially when you find it was your close friend yang sudah hide all your thing. And then you describe how you feel after that. That's the beauty. And then you know how to bring closer. And sometimes we have to be agile, the ability to have this agility. And what being said, I think maybe Mr. Kok or somebody has said, sometimes I don't think that way. That's behavior. Because that's why when people change his hat, it 100% become that way. So you are being attracted to the condition where you are. So thank you very much, Father Marzuki, for inviting me today.
Thank
you
very much,
appreciate
Dr. Sᴇʀɪ. Every time you give your views, every time you summarize, I really treasure that. You are really excellent in summarizing. So thank you again, Dr. Sᴇʀɪ. And moving on, so I'll move to Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, Mr. Marzuki.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, thank you again for a wonderful session. Now I know why my wife made me attend this session. And she was behind, she was like, oh yeah, you got 10 points. Let me see. The number 4 one, I think you need to work on that. Yeah. Anyway, it's a fantastic session again, Mr. Marzuki. I totally enjoyed it. I love how the transition of shifts that you have to make, being able to balance between one and the other, self and the other. I also enjoyed the last 2 points, which is responsibility and rejuvenation. I didn't know rejuvenation actually plays an important role. And I didn't know, it didn't really click. And sometimes now I understand why humans need, like men sometimes need a little cave, sometimes just to be out of others. Sometimes, after a lot of interactions, we tend to want to have a little bit of peace, and a little bit of time to ourselves. Because a lot of the times that I think Marilyn and what Marilyn and I do is we spend a lot of time with others because we are coaches, you see. So a lot of times we absorb a lot of things from energy and a lot of problems, goodness, bad things, everything, from swimmers and our company and stuff. And this final part, rejuvenation, really got me going. So yeah, thank you again, Mr. Marzuki, and totally enjoyed it.
Good. I'm glad that you got that, Mark. Yeah. And my regards to Deirdre if she's listening there. And over to you, Marilyn.
Hi. Yeah, it was a great session. And by the way, Mark, I totally agree with number 4. I didn't expect that the solution, quote unquote, solution to these few behavioral issues is a very simple self versus others meta program. But I totally, yes, it is. It really is, because I am number 9, or I used to be, like, chronically late to everything and for everyone. It was horrible. No, it wasn't that. It wasn't, I didn't realize how selfish I was until one of my really good friends sent me this article about being late and how the person who's being late is very selfish, only thinks about themselves and not the the time of the other person they are losing or spending waiting for us. And that just slapped me on the face and really made me woke up. And yeah, it's versus practically I was just thinking about myself and I wasn't even concerned about, wasting the other person's time. So yeah, it is totally self versus others. And thank you for this reminder tonight.
Right. Thank you. And Marilyn, I'm sure you remember that it is not either or, it's both and. It's about moving along that scale. There are times that you need to give attention to yourself. Nursing a young child, a baby, you need to take care of self. And taking care of a baby is about others. So moving along that scale, it's not either or, it's both and. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Guat-Cheng, would you like to go with the point that you mentioned in the chat?
Oh, okay. It's
Oh, we've lost audio. We've lost audio. Yeah, Guat-Cheng put in the text chat box there.
me to find balance between the self and also, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Do you hear?
Yes, now I hear. Yeah. Okay. Good. Thank you, Guat-Cheng. And moving over to Akmal. Go ahead. Akmal, you're joining for the first time.
Yeah, this is my first time. So thank you so much for this sharing. So basically, from this first session, I have the perspective or the expectation that this is a very good sharing, and I learned a lot of new things. And basically, for the to this topic, is it triggered me. First thing first is you need to you need to understand yourself first, and then from there sometimes we can't see what are the behavior that we turn other people off. So it's actually a self-reflection for ourselves. So we hope that we always thinking that we already done a good job and behave like a good thing to other people. Actually, some behavior might hurt others. So from this session, I learned that it's actually you have chance to change yourself, your perspective, and then be benefit to others and be guided. So from Mr. Mazuki, so I learned a lot of things. So I think the best way for myself, especially, is to mirror ourselves first, and then try to balance between what you said just now, between self and others, and try to convey or convey the positive vibes to the others. So I think I'm very glad to join this this session, and hopefully can join for another session, inshallah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Akmal. You joined this session through the Mokoba Telegram group.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And over to you, Sarah. Go ahead.
Hi there. So thank you so much, Mr. Mazuki. It just made me realize that I tend to focus also myself more than compared to others. And then it made me realize that this needs to be changed. And actually I've been trying to change also especially when I do in working environment, but yeah, it's a bit hard, but hopefully it'll get better bit by bit.
Right. Thank you. Yeah. And the way for you to do it is pick up small things that you can do. Small things that you can do that you know you need to do that because now you are shifting focus to other small things. For example, like when my always she comes into the story. My granddaughter, the eldest one, Grasshopper, when she was about 2, even 3 years old, when she loves to eat fruits, whenever we ask, if I would ask, Azara, may I have one? What she'll do is that she'll look at the fruits in front of her, choose, and then give it. Initially, we were wondering, why is this girl so choosy? It came to the point whereby one of the days she was eating strawberries, and you know Malaysian strawberries lebih yang masam daripada yang manis kan. So she looked around and she picked one. This one is sweet, and then she gave to us. Then only we realized, whenever she asks something from us, she'll pick the best to give to us. So that could be one specific exercise that you can do. Find something small and simple and say, okay, what I'm going to do today is I'm going to do this thing because this thing is going to benefit somebody. So that is how we practice it into our neurology. Not just thinking, now we are bringing into our behavior. Yeah? So one of the things that I have is that I have small box on my table that I wake up every morning. What I'll do is that I go into my wallet, I take out RM1, just RM1, and I put into that box with the intention, this is my charity for today. I'm thinking about somebody benefiting from that. So just once a day, I deliberately do that so that I can do something that is focused on others. So training myself to do that, bringing it into the neurology. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Going over to Hashim.
Yeah, I got 2 points. First one, I love the metaphor of the gardener with the flowering plants. That's the first one. And secondly, when the MCO is over, my next visit to the mamak shop or mamak bistro will be a socially ecological one. Thank you, thank you.
Thank you, Hashim. Thank you very much. And over to you, Rina. Are you able to access your microphone? No? Okay, moving on to Satria.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mazuki. As usual, very insightful and just in time as well, because I have this situation similar to your nephew on STPM and all that. My son has just now started to apply for university. And of course, we have a certain preference and he has a certain other preference. so taking into the meta program of responsibility, so what I do is just explain properly what A is and what B is, then the decision is up to him. So, okay lah. So feel better tonight actually.
Thank you very much, Satria. And last but not least, Hafiz, is there anything you like to say before we end the session? Yeah, are you able to access your mic? No? Okay, don't worry, I'll be sending you the link to the recording as soon as I upload it. So with that, everyone, thank you very much for being here this evening. And I look forward to seeing you in the next session. For your announcement, next week, we shift gears into meta coaching. So this is the a more niche discussion into the skills of coaching. And the following week we'll be going into the topic on parenting, and the topic for that one will be principle-centered parenting. So that's the topic that we'll be having then. So with that, thank you very much. It's a real pleasure and honor to be for me to be with all of you, and I look forward to seeing you again. So with that, good night. God bless. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Assalamualaikum.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.